Hello again and welcome to part 2 of Haunt Your Web Page. This is the part which is about CSS transitions and animations. That is the way to make stuff move on your web page and be responsive and do different things while the user is interacting with it. So to start off with, I'm going to do two things this time. I'm going to get a ghost image up on screen and I'm going to make it move around in a kind of random looking way. And we're going to actually have a poltergeist as well, I think, and that's going to grab one of our paragraphs and throw it away. So, to get started, first of all, I want an actual ghost image. So I'm looking on Google here and I found my ghost that I like. And this is public domain, which is quite nice. So we don't have to worry about attribution, though we might choose to do it if we want to. First thing I'm going to do with this image is I'm going to edit it in GIMP. What I want to do is get rid of that black background. We don't need this image to be this big if we're just using the ghost out of it. And we don't want a big black square going all over the top of our stuff. So I'm just going to have a little look around to see if I can find what the ghost looks like when we have gotten rid of the black and turned it into transparent. And that's what it will look like. So that's okay. But even though I've got rid of the black background, the image is still big. So I should fix that too. I should crop it so it's just fitted around the ghost. That didn't work very well. I think I need an actual box, and yes, I'm going to make my image that only just fits around the ghost herself, and that's more like the size of the image that we need. So we'll save that. The original ghost picture was a JPEG, but we're not going to save it as a JPEG because JPEGs don't allow for transparent backgrounds. We're going to save it as PNG, which does allow for that. So that is all fine. And now that we've saved the ghost image, we should put it into our HTML. So that tag is just an image tag, img, and that image/ghost.png is where I put it. And I've given it a class name so that we can style it. So right now it's just sitting at the bottom of our page, not doing anything very much. So let's go and make some styles for this class ghost, which I said it was of. To start off, I'm going to give it a position of fixed. What this means is that no matter what you do when you scroll up and down in the browser, the image, the picture, is going to stay fixed with respect to the screen. It's going to stay in the same place unless you tell it to go somewhere else. And so here you are, it is fixed. When I scroll back up and down, it doesn't go anywhere. And its position is 0 from the bottom and 0 from the right. So that's all very nice. And now I think what else I want to do with the ghost. She doesn't look very ghostly just yet, so I think I'm going to make her a bit more transparent. She's a little bit transparent because of the way I saved the image. That opacity there is how transparent she is, goes from 0 to 1. So I'm going to make her 0.2. The two different lines that I've got there, the second one is for particular web browsers. So I've just got both of those, and that's not bad. So I've made her a bit more transparent. So now I'm going to do the first of our responsive things, which I'm going to tell the ghost what to do when we hover over the top of them. So there's a few of these different selectors that do things in a responsive way based on what the user of your page actually does. Hovering over things is one that is used a lot. There's also other ones, like for instance active, if you click on it, is a good selector that's responsive. But this time I'm just going to hover. So here we go. So when I hover, oh, there she goes, on and off, on and off. We don't really want it to go on and off like a light bulb. So what are we going to do about this? We wanted to go on and off in a slightly better way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a transition. Transition says go between the normal ghost style and the style when you're hovered in this particular way. So we're going to transition the opacity in particular, and we're going to take 5 seconds to do it. So if I save that, we can see what happens. I'm going to reload it, and now when she transitions, she takes 5 seconds to go all the way from opacity 0.2 to opacity 1 and all the way back when we stop hovering over her. That's very nice, and I'm just going to show you I don't have to put the transition on the main element. I can put the transition there for hover, but when I go off there, it's going to snap back. So that's the difference between saying that the transition line is in the main ghost element and in the ghost hover selector. If it's in the hover selector, then it only applies when you're going into a hover, and I don't like that so much, so I'm putting it back in the main styling. And now I'm just going to do one of these little things that you do because of the fact that not all browsers work in the same way. So these are all the different implementations for different browsers of transition. Most of them are actually for older browsers, but we'll put them in anyway because it doesn't hurt. And we're going to transition not only the opacity but also the filter property. And again, that's the same reason, because some browsers are going to use opacity, which is the newer way of doing it. Some are going to use filter. We'll just say transition both of them whenever you do anything, and there we go. What else do I want to transition? Well, the other place that I might use a hover is these credits down the bottom are tiny because we don't want them to be in the way, but we might actually like to have people have the opportunity to see and actually read the credits. So a good way of doing that is if we hover over the credit, it gets bigger. So I'm going to make the font size bigger, but the line height smaller. So basically the font will just expand within its line basically. And so let's just go down to the bottom, reload that, go way down to the bottom, and here we go. It's got bigger when we hover over it, but again, it's doing it in that snap-on, snap-off way that we don't really like. So let's put a transition in here. So this time, instead of individually saying transition the font size and transition the line height, I'm just going to say transition everything. And that works too. That keyword all is very useful. And here are all my little accommodations for the fact that different browsers implement transitions with different keywords. Hopefully in a year or two we can just forget about all of those O's and Moz's and possibly WebKits as well. The reason why that is not working is actually that I haven't got a colon. I've got a syntax error. So if I put the little colon in all of those places, then that should actually work rather than not doing anything, which is what it did just then. Let's go down to the bottom again and see. That's much nicer. So when you hover over it, it becomes big enough for you to actually read it. That's all good. What am I going to do next? So I'm going to just hover over it because it's pretty. The next thing I'm going to do, I think, with my ghost is probably to put an animation on her. So animation in CSS works by keyframe animation, which is one of these techniques where you say, okay, at 0% of the way through the animation it looks like this, then halfway through it looks like this, and then at the end it looks like that. So the animation will smoothly go between all of the different points that you've defined. So here I go, I'm going to define this animation and I'm going to say 50% of the way through the animation, the thing that the haunt animation applies to, which is going to be the ghost, will be 50% of the way to the right and 50% of the way to the bottom. So halfway through the animation, the thing, whatever it is, which we'll determine in a minute, will be in the middle of the screen. And I'll put an 80% point in as well, because why not? So 80% of the way through the animation, it's going to be 10% from the right and 90% from the bottom, so close to the top. I hadn't actually said how long the animation takes at this point, because you don't do that within the definition of the animation. You do it within the definition of the thing that's going to be animated. So the thing that's going to be animated is whatever is of class ghost, in this case our little ghost image. So it's going to have the haunt animation on, and it's going to take 10 seconds for the whole haunt animation to go all the way through. And in this particular case, I don't need the O's and I don't need the W's. Animation or WebKit animation will cover all possible browsers. There's also two ways of doing the keyframe. There's keyframes and WebKit keyframes. So we're going to do both of those, just a cut and paste. So let's save that and let's have a little look at what happens. What has happened is that it's not doing it yet. And I'm pretty sure I know why that is. It's because I haven't got my colon again. Syntax error. Let's fix that syntax error and go back again. And there she goes. She's going through her animation. And when I hover over her, she'll do the transition at the same time. So that's pretty nice. She's being very responsive. And she cycled all the way through the animation within the 10 seconds. So at the 5-second mark or so, she was about in the middle. At about the 8-second mark, she was at the top. So that's kind of nice. And what I'd like her to do is to sort of randomly go around the screen. But at the moment, I think I'll put another couple of things on before I get to that point. So Z-index is another thing that we can do with her. Z-index means whether this element is on the top or the bottom when you've got a couple of overlapping elements. -1 means push it right to the back. All of the different elements, the paragraphs, the images, whatever, all have a Z-index. Generally they're positive. And so I'm just going to do, I'm going to have it go to the back and then go to the front again. And now if I run this animation, she's going up and she's at the back. She has gone behind the paragraph and then she went in front of it again. So that works quite well. Doesn't really transition smoothly, it just snaps backwards and forwards. That's just the way that Z-index works. That's okay. I might just put another stopping point here in my keyframes. I'm going to put a keyframe at 10%. Not for any particular reason to do with the moving about or to do with the Z-index, but because I'm about to do another thing with her, as well as sending her backwards and forwards. I'll just change this so she starts at the back. Well, she actually at 0% she starts in the front, then she goes to the back, then she goes to the front, then she goes back again. But what other things can I do with her? I can actually put a filter on her. Filters are very useful. You can go to W3 Schools to find out all of the different possible filters that you can put on. There's loads of them. But one I want at the moment is the blur filter, which is going to basically blur her out. And I'm going to put quite a strong blur filter on her of 50 pixels, and that's going to blur her a lot and make her look kind of nice. So why do I put blur of 0 pixels on at the start there? Because that's just what she looks like normally, so that seems a bit weird. But the reason for it is that I want to make it very obvious where the blur is starting from and where it finishes. If I didn't put that 0 pixel blur on at the 10% mark, she would start going into the blur right from the very start of the animation, right from 0%. And I don't necessarily want that. So I will just take that and I'll have it in both WebKit keyframes and in keyframes itself. And then I will run this again. Oh, she's sipping over a bit, never mind. So that's the blur. She is blurring till she just looks like a white blob, and then she comes back again to look like a person, which is a rather ghostly kind of way to behave. I kind of like that. I'm going to keep that. So now the next thing that we want to do is we'd like to make her behave a little bit randomly. I'm just doing some fiddling here. I'll make it go for 20 seconds, which looks a bit nicer and a bit smoother. But my problem at the moment is going to be that if I want to make her move around the screen in a kind of random sort of way and not just be boringly moving backwards and forwards over the same path, and at the moment she just does one iteration, but I can make her loop infinitely as well, which I'll eventually do. If I want to make it be a bit random, there's no way that you can do random numbers in CSS, unfortunately. But what you can do is cheat a bit to make it look random when it's really not. So I am just going to copy and paste stuff that I've done before, and then just basically show you my working. What have I done? I've changed my haunt. I've separated out into a number of different animations. Haunt X, going backwards and forwards in the X direction, haunt Y, going up and down the Y direction, and fade out, which is the one that blurs her and move back, which is the one that sends her Z index backwards and forwards. And I'm going to run these animations at different speeds. So what that should end up with is that no two of the animations will be in the same position at the same time for a long, long time, and the animation will start to look a bit random. So there she's going up because of haunt Y, she's going left because of haunt X animation, and she's faded out there in the middle because of the fade out animation, and they're all running at different speeds. So the haunt X has come back because 21 seconds is about finished, but haunt Y still has some time to run. So that's all very good, but in order to get the full value out of this, what I need to do is make it loop, not just do one iteration. And infinite is the name for looping forever and ever. You could also put a number in there. If you just wanted to loop, say, 3 times or 5 times, you could say 3 for looping 3 times. But I'd like her to be going forever and ever and ever, haunting without rest. So that's what she's going to do. Here we go. Now she's doing the same thing, so she's going up and left at the same time and fading out halfway through the middle into her little blur, and going backwards and forwards in the Z index. So there she is going back, and when she comes to the right hand side, she's starting off her animating to the left before she gets to the bottom. So it's starting to look a lot more random, and next time she blurs out, which she should do quite soon, it will be at a, so there you go, she's at the bottom blurring out, last time she was at the top. So that's nice. Now I'll go on to my next animation. So next one's the poltergeist one. So I'm basically just including this. I'm going to cut and paste again because you don't want to see me typing forever. But I will show you that keyframe animations can actually get quite complicated. My poltergeist one, what it's going to do is it basically jiggles one paragraph back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for a while. So that's the rotation thing. It's 0, 1, -1, 2, -2, 3, -3, whatever. And the translate transformation. So all of these transformations are basically just redrawing whatever the animation is on. So yeah, rotate backwards and forwards, very, very quick. So you can see I'm going 0.1%, 0.2%. It's going between these different rotations very, very quickly. You can go as quickly as you like. And then at the end, it transforms it by pulling it back a little bit, and then by giving it -1,000 or so translation, which basically means pushing it way off the left-hand edge and way up the top. So it's going to go completely off the screen. And so this fling animation that I've just copied and pasted I'm going to say the full thing runs for 30 seconds. So let's reload that. It's the first paragraph, I think. It's going to get long. So it's not till 20. So there we go. It jiggled backwards and forwards for a while, and then it went zoom off the left-hand edge of the stage. Now what am I doing here? Towards the end of the animation, I make it go to opacity 0 and then back to opacity 1. The reason I've done this is because the animation is going to go to the end of the animation. That is, when it finishes, you're going to see that paragraph back on screen again. So I basically just had a little technique for getting it to come back in a nice way. There are actually ways to stop an animation halfway through, which possibly we might do later on. Not quite sure. But in this particular instance, I thought we want the animation to go all the way through so that we can see the text again. So those were our 2 elements of transformation and transition and animation, which is making our web page look yet more interesting. Next video will go on and do a few more things to it, this time using JavaScript. So I hope you come back for that. Bye!